I need a haircut. Hey, what's up guys, my name is the Cherno. Welcome back to another one of these kind of weekly vlog slash devlog slash, I'm still trying to figure out what these videos are. Basically, for those of you who are new to this, because this is a relatively new thing and I've done it like once in my life, I thought it would be a cool idea to have like a little bit of a weekly devlog where I show what I've done in Hazel, specifically the development branch of Hazel, which is like the 3D fun version that I'm continuously working on and live streaming and doing all of that stuff. And treating that as more of like a general update of everything that's been going on, not just specifically hazel-dev. So welcome to the weekly vlog. I am indeed wearing this jumper. It seems like it's the only thing I wear these days. I'm sure this is gonna like become a meme or something. Let's talk a little bit about what's happened over the last week and what is new. I hate my hair. I really don't. It's just a ball of fluff, man. What's going on? This video was going so well too, but it's a complete disaster. Anyway, so you guys are gonna have to bear with the hair today because I'm just having a bad hair day. So a few weeks ago, I started doing weekly live streams where I showed myself working on hazel-dev and all of the kind of new stuff that I was implementing. It's meant to be like a really chill stream where I just work on hazel-dev as I would, but it's just completely live streamed. This idea originated from a few things. First of all, it was a suggestion by some people. Second of all, I wanted to figure out a way to reward patrons more. And third, I really needed to find a way to actually discipline myself to like sit down and work on hazel-dev, because with so many things going on, like amongst making videos and all of that, it was difficult for me to sometimes find the time to actually sit down and work on hazel-dev. But if it's kind of like a, you know, weekly stream for patrons, like obviously it's something that I'm actually going to sit down and do. And reflecting back on how it's gone, because this was kind of like a new thing that I introduced in April, I really enjoy it. I'm definitely going to keep doing it. And to be honest, I think I've done more work this month for Hazel than I have, or for hazel-dev specifically, than I have like this entire year. And I think part of the reason is that when you sit down in front of a live stream and you start doing, well, pretty much anything like work related, you know, you're going to probably keep working on it for the duration of the stream. Like, I can't just start working on hazel-dev, then as soon as something becomes a little bit difficult or a little bit hard, I just kind of give up and start watching YouTube videos. If I'm on stream, that's never gonna happen. I'm gonna sit down and I'm actually gonna work out the problem and I'm gonna solve it. That's something that you don't really get when you just work by yourself. So I've been really appreciating that kind of environment. It's also cool to have people kind of, you know, watch you and comment on everything you've done, because obviously, you know, I make mistakes, and it's good when someone's kind of watching you and being like, oh, you forgot this, or you forgot that, or you misspelt something, or you used a wrong value or a wrong number here, and that's why it's not working. So it's been really cool. It's also been really cool to interact with the community more, and I've just really loved that. I've mentioned several times that kind of working at home and not being in a team in like an office is kind of a new change for me still. I'm still getting used to it. I still don't really like it because I'm a very social person, so I think these live streams have been absolutely amazing. The other really cool benefit is because the streams kind of are recorded and there's like a whole library of these streams, I'm going to be able to look back on basically a lot of Hazel's kind of 3D development, not just the game engine series where I teach everything, but literally me for hours just sitting there working on Hazel and figuring out all these new things and making things in Hazel, whatever it is that I'm doing. So I think that like I'm just really happy with the live streams. I finally got my home internet upgraded to a decent upload speed so I can stream in really high quality. And yeah, I'm just super excited. It's been on my mind the whole week. Now, I did mention that it's for patrons only, and it is meant to be like a reward for patrons supporting me. And I totally understand for those of you who can't afford to do that, especially at the moment. And I'm grateful for all of you watching my videos, no matter if you're patrons or not. And that's why I'm going to be doing these weekly vlogs. I'm just going to show what I've done in Hazel, and you guys can kind of get the big picture and still obviously follow the development of Hazel. I keep saying like hazel-dev, Hazel 3D. I don't know, Hazel is one engine. I'm just kind of developing it in two different worlds, so to speak. So if I'm talking about like 3D or dev or whatever, then that's referring to like hazel-dev, I guess. And then Hazel itself, I think I might even refer to that just as the game engine series, because that's like a completely different project if you think about it altogether. On one hand, I'm building an engine, but on the other hand, I'm teaching people how to build an engine. Those things are kind of different. Anyway, the point is, it's a new month, it's May. I really want to share these live streams with more of you, so what I'm doing for this month is I'm completely slicing the live streaming price in half. The previous Patreon tier level to access the live streams was the same as the tier level to access the hazel-dev source code, which was $10 a month. However, I'm reducing that to $5 a month. So if you want to watch these live streams, it's just $5 a month. I really think a lot of you would enjoy it, and of course, I'm super grateful for all of your support. I wouldn't be making Hazel at all if it wasn't for you guys, so thank thank you so much. I love you all. Now, speaking of live streams, last night I was going to stream myself making some music for the kind of Hazel Boulder Dash game that we made and we talked about in some of the previous episodes of the Game Engine series. And because making music is kind of different to programming, and because I also like to stream myself playing Minecraft and I like to just hang out with the stream, and it's clearly not really related to the content on this channel, I thought it would be a good idea to make a new kind of personal channel. A channel that's kind of about me, not really about the Cherno, but more about just my life and the stuff that I want to show, maybe random vlogs, maybe, you know, Minecraft streams, maybe like music and music production streams and stuff like that. A channel that isn't necessarily about the programming, software engineering side of me, but just is more about me as a person. And so I did that. So I've got a new kind of personal channel. I'll leave a link in the description below. Last night I did a live stream on that channel and that stream is gonna stay up. We basically just hung out and I did a little bit of a Q&A session. Then I ended up playing a couple songs for the stream.
Walk in your rainbow paradise.
And then we played some Minecraft. So all in all, it was a cool little chill stream. We just hung out, had a good time. If you guys want to see more of that, then definitely head over onto that channel and subscribe. I've got quite a few things in store for that channel. There's definitely not going to be any kind of release schedule, but a lot of the stuff that you can maybe expect on that channel is like music, cooking, maybe a little bit of gaming. I'm not really that into gaming aside from like playing a little bit of Minecraft every now and then, so we'll see what happens there. Just random vlogs, stuff like that. So I'm super excited about that, but yeah, again, no release schedule. It's just whenever I feel like putting stuff up that's more personal, it will go on that channel. Now, I've been really excited recently about the whole Hazel Boulder Dash kind of experiment, and I've even started making my own little thing inside Hazel. It's really cool now that people are able to use Hazel, even though it is still very limited, especially in my eyes. The community is starting to kind of take it and make stuff with it, and that's super important for the maturity of a game engine. Like, if there's no users making anything for the game engine, it's very, very difficult for you to actually make a good game engine. It's not even about you making things, it's about someone else coming in who isn't you, who hasn't written the engine, who doesn't really understand how it works, definitely not as well as you, to come in and then start to actually use your software, use your architecture, to actually try and build something, to create something. That's really cool, and it's very beneficial to Hazel. And so one of the things that really stops Hazel Dash, which is the new name of the Boulder Dash clone that we've actually just taken and started changing, one of the things that's stopping that from actually being, I guess, a proper game, because even though it doesn't have like a scripting language and it might not have this and that, and Hazel is still missing so many things, it's still very possible to make a game. But there is one thing that's missing, and that is audio. Without sound effects, without music, it's kind of not feature complete, so to speak. So last week, over the course of like a few hours, I just wrote a little audio library called Hazel Audio, which I'm probably going to completely rewrite over this weekend, maybe, because I've you know, having used it for a week now, I've realized that I may want to do it a little bit differently. But we've integrated that into the Hazel Dash game, and so now we have like sound effects in it. That's why I was going to write some like background music and stuff for it. So that's been a lot of fun, and that's one of the things that I've done this week. And I'll probably make a video next week talking a little bit more in depth about how that project is going and sharing a little bit more about that with you guys. As far as hazel-dev goes, over this past week, I've been mainly focusing on the rendering side of it. I've added MSAA, multi-sample anti-aliasing. I've added basically better material support and being able to kind of take... In fact, I'll show you guys in a minute. One of the biggest next stages that we have, aside from rendering, because rendering is something that I'm probably going to keep working on, like, you know, over the course of hazel-dev's development, because there's always more rendering features you can add. There's always ways you can kind of improve things, make it support more, all of that stuff. But we need some kind of scene/entity component system, and that's one of the biggest things that we're going to be focusing on in the dev branch, because if we can do that and we can integrate Lua, you know, then we finally have some kind of way to make 3D games in Hazel without even using C++, and that's kind of the dream. And especially since hazel-dev actually has a pretty good editor set up that's capable of doing all of that stuff, you know, that's definitely the steps in the right direction. Not to mention the fact that we'll be able to take that scene system and that ECS system and actually integrate that into public Hazel, into the Game Engine series Hazel. And since I would have already written a good ECS and scene kind of system inside hazel-dev, I'll be able to obviously kind of teach that design and integrate that back into the Game Engine series. So that's the kind of overall plan there. That's what's going on with hazel-dev. Let's take a look at the features that I basically added this week. Okay, so as I mentioned, this week was primarily spent on improving the rendering and graphics and just, I guess, beginning scenes in general in Hazel. So what I did was I jumped into Blender, I made this little test scene. We have a whole bunch of actual different objects, obviously, that make up this scene. We have 5 objects altogether: wall, floor, and then this sphere, cone, and cube. What I did was I actually gave each of these a material in shader. If we just look at like the material preview, for example, and if we jump over into shading, you can see that we have different materials for each of these objects, and we can easily just control all of these materials using Blender's material system. Now, the idea is that an artist working inside Blender should be able to basically construct a scene inside Blender and then have Hazel render it in essentially the same way. I mean, obviously there are going to be differences, they are different renderers, but the data that we kind of set over here inside Blender, that should more or less be able to be translated into something that you would see inside Hazel. So in other words, if I make a green cube, a kind of blue cone, and a red sphere inside Blender, I should be able to export that and see that inside Hazel. And that's basically the workflow that I've been ironing out this week. So if we jump into Hazel and we load this model, you can see that is essentially what we see. We have all of these objects here. You can see that the roughness is also kind of translated from Blender. So inside Blender, we might have this surface having a roughness of 1, having a metallic value of 0, meaning it's not a metal because it's, in this case, it's basically like concrete. And then we should be able to jump in and say that, well, okay, let's maybe make this a lot rougher and let's change the color to, what color do we like here? Orange. We like orange on this channel. Let's change the color to orange. And then theoretically, we could just export that as an FBX. I'll maybe call it test scene video or something like that for this video. I'll hit export. And then over here in Hazel, I can just open the test scene video. Here it is, open. And then you can see that we have that kind of new material properties being imported here. And looking over here in our scene hierarchy, you can see that in this example, we've kind of got this gun and then this scene. I can look at the test entity, which is the scene. It's got a mesh. We have a root node, and then we have all of these kind of wall, sphere, cone, all of these various meshes that we can actually explore within the scene hierarchy. And of course, I'm going to clean up the UI here and bring out all of these transforms and stuff into probably this properties panel, but you get the idea. And if we switch back to our original scene, one of the things that I think is very important when you are making a render, especially if you're trying to make a physically based renderer, is making sure that what you're rendering is actually correct. So you can see that, I mean, looking at this, we have this kind of halo around this red sphere, and that was throwing me off a lot. And this is the Fresnel, and the Fresnel is basically the increased reflectance that we see at grazing angles. So along the edges of this sphere, I mean, even in the real world, if you hold something up and you look at it from a very kind of glancing grazing angle, you'll see that it's actually more reflective than if you look at it like straight on like this, which is why we should see that obviously when we're rendering things. Now in this case, it looks particularly amplified. And one of the reasons, it doesn't look amplified here, does it? It looks amplified on top of this because this is very dark and it looks like this sphere obviously is still reflecting the kind of bottom. And this is just a very bright cube map. It's a very bright environment. But this was throwing me off, and I was convinced for like a good half hour that the Fresnel is just wrong, which, you know, is, I guess, pretty difficult because the Fresnel equation is actually very simple, which is why it's really important to have a good reference. And for that, I really like using a program called Marmoset Toolbag. It's something that we used to use at EA, and it's just pretty much industry standard. But if we look at this same scene using Marmoset's renderer, you can see that, well, it looks the same. We see this massive kind of halo around this thing, and it ultimately looks very similar to what it does inside Hazel. Hazel maybe looks a little bit less dull or less contrasty or whatever. That could be due to a number of reasons, but obviously all in all, I'm happy with this. And you can see that like the weird kind of cone reflectance, which is just due to the way that it's modeled, I guess, is kind of, you know, it's consistent with what we see inside Hazel. So it's important to compare your renderer to other renderers with kind of the same input material parameters, I'll say, to make sure that everything is running okay. And obviously, you know, for this example, as I mentioned, a very bright environment. If I was to load a different environment map, if I go into assets, env, and then maybe what's a pink sunrise is kind of a dark one, then you can see it looks completely different because it's kind of dark, you know, the scene is dark and this will look different. So that's just one thing that had me a little bit confused earlier today. Now, as I mentioned, the other thing that I added was multi-sample anti-aliasing. So I think this is MSAA 8 times at the moment, but you can see this line here, which is the wall, looks very smooth, looks completely not jagged at all. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to add in MSAA. In fact, everything looks super smooth. All the lines look very smooth and not not jagged at all, which is really cool. So that was just something I kind of just slapped in. This view that you're seeing here is now rendering into a multi-sampled frame buffer, or rather a texture that supports multi-sampling. And then we're multi-sampling to actually display that again onto this viewport. So that's kind of the idea. And of course, it massively increases the graphical fidelity of our scene. I am obviously going to make that an option. We'll have the ability to disable that and then probably do 2 times, 4 times, 8 times, but that's something that I will add in the future. I also added the 2D batch renderer into this, so we can actually render things in 2D space on top here if we like. And to that effect as well, I added bounding boxes. So if we toggle this show bounding boxes or just hit Control B, you can see that it will actually show us bounding boxes over all of the objects in our scene. Now at the moment it doesn't work with animated meshes, which is why the gun doesn't have it, but with static meshes you can see for each mesh here we have the ability to view the bounding box. We can also check this on top checkbox and now it will actually render them on top. So if I'm behind a wall or anything like that, I can still see them. And this is all done using the 2D renderer. So the 2D batch renderer, I've extended it to also be able to render lines, and I've put it into Hazel. So we can render quads and lines and all of that stuff. And these are obviously all batched into one draw call as well. So those are basically the new features that I've added into Hazel over the last week or two. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this little devlog. Let me know what you think of these. This is kind of still a relatively new idea. I'm hoping to be able to do these weekly and just show you guys all the progress that I've done. Obviously for me, you know, being accountable and being able to show stuff that I've done during the week, it's helpful and it's healthy for me to kind of, you know, do that because I have no boss, and it's nice to be able to be like, hey guys, you know, check out all the stuff I've done. What do you think? Does it look right to you? All of that stuff. So thank you guys for watching. I do hope that you enjoy these. Don't forget that you can help support everything that I'm doing here on YouTube and Hazel by going to patreon.com/the Cherno. Thank you so much for your support. Don't forget about the new personal channel that I've made if you are interested in that, and I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.